Caitlin Clark, the league's biggest name, biggest draw, biggest everything, just told the world she's not coming back. Not next week, not next month, not next season. The news doesn't break. It detonates. Timelines stall. Group chats spiral. Viewership shudders. Sponsors go silent. And while executives scramble to paste on polite smiles, Sophie Cunningham walks straight into the mess like a storm siren that finally decided to start screaming. No PR polish, no league-approved scripts, just a player who's seen too much, stayed quiet too long, and is done pretending this is fine. If you came here for a softened version, this isn't that. What follows is the conversation the league didn't want to have in public. It's the one fans have been dancing around with coded tweets and clipped highlights. It's the why behind the meteor. Because the story isn't only that Caitlin left. It's why she felt like she had to, and the first line in that story belongs to Sophie. She didn't throw a polite, "We need to be better," into a post-game. She threw a match. She said the quiet part out loud. You don't build your whole brand on a player and then watch her get knocked around like a prop and call it just basketball. You don't smile for the cameras and then shrug at the elbows when the lights go off. You don't beg a nation to care and then punish the reason they showed up. That's not growth. That's negligence in a jersey. This isn't a rant from someone who doesn't understand how the league works. Sophie does. She's lived the travel, the pay scales, the politics that never make the broadcast. She knows which stars get a whistle and which ones get a lecture about earning it. She knows how jealousy dresses up as toughness and how physical play becomes a free pass. When the target is the one whose moving numbers nobody else can touch. That's the undertow she's calling out. The difference between competition and contempt. One sharpens iron, the other dulls futures. Clark's impact was obvious from orbit. Ticket lines curving around arenas that were empty 2 seasons ago. Merch moving like it finally had a heartbeat. Broadcast cuts that felt less like charity and more like inevitability. Clips crossing over into timelines that never watch women's hoops. You either see that as a gift and protect it, or you treat it like a problem and pretend it'll survive without care. The league said it wanted the spotlight. It didn't plan for the heat. Here's the part fans recognized before the suits did. The hits on Clark didn't feel random. They felt pointed. Drives that turned into collisions. Contact that kept escalating from hard play to message sent. The constant, weary argument online after every game. This is the league, she'll adjust. Pretended adjustment fixes everything. It doesn't fix culture. It doesn't fix a season-long wink at the idea that putting the face of your product on the floor means she's free to be used as a statement every night. That's the disrespect Sophie meant, not only from an opponent in a 2-second play, from a system that watched a pattern and decided the chaos made good television. You don't have to love a star to be fair to her. You don't have to be a fan to call a foul. That's the point. Respect isn't a reward. It's the floor. What happens when you ignore that floor? We're living it. The league lost the player who turned casuals into diehards in a month. It didn't lose her because the grind swallowed her whole, or because the numbers fell back to earth. It lost her because she looked around and didn't see protection. Physical, emotional, professional. She didn't see a league willing to set a standard, even if it made some people uncomfortable. She didn't see a room ready to grow with the attention it had begged for. So she took the part that still belonged to her career, and pointed it somewhere else. That noise you hear is opportunity leaving the building with its own bag. And here's where Sophie becomes the axis. She could have played nice, could have kept her head down, counted her minutes, counted her checks, and let the discourse eat itself. Instead, she walked to the front, put her name on the line, and said the sentence everyone was dancing around. We failed her. Not because she needed a concierge whistle, because she needed what every star in every thriving league gets when they change the math: accountability around them and consistency under them. If you think that's favoritism, you don't understand how ecosystems survive. The jealousy piece is uglier, but we can't skip it. The league wants growth. Growth brings attention. Attention doesn't show up alone. It brings messy cousins like ego, envy, and the sudden urge to grade other people's blessings on a curve. When the clip count went nuclear, some folks stopped seeing Clark as a rising tide and started seeing her as a mirror they didn't want to look into. The hits got harder, the commentary got weirder, the microaggressions got louder. Every touch was an occasion for coded lectures about humility and respect for the game, as if ratings are disrespectful now. As if a 22-year-old driving demand is an insult to whoever wanted to get there first. Sophie saw it. Fans saw it. Pretending they didn't doesn't make it less visible. It just makes the silence complicit. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Excellence is disruptive. It rearranges pecking orders. It makes old hierarchies feel unstable. Healthy systems adapt. Unhealthy ones punish. The last few months looked like punishment by 1,000 shrugs. Let's stop here and breathe, because this isn't just about Clark. It's about every player who will come next. Every teenager who just watched the biggest star take her talent elsewhere and wondered if this league knows how to hold greatness without flinching. The message matters. "We can't protect you" becomes "we won't protect you faster than you think." And that second one doesn't just cost a star, it drains a pipeline. Sophie's call isn't to burn the house down, it's to fix the wiring. Officiating that sees the context, not just the snapshot. Leadership that tells the truth, even when it hurts to say we missed it. A culture that doesn't confuse being fair with being soft. Policies that treat marquee players as assets to build with, not targets to prove a point against. You don't have to create two sets of rules to do that. You have to enforce the ones you already have with a spine. There's a reason people outside the W call this inevitable. They think every league eats its young until the young get rich enough to eat back. But women's basketball doesn't have to inherit the worst habits to be big. It can be better because it already is in so many ways. Community, advocacy, the capacity to hold complexity without turning it into a circus. That's why this hurts. The gap between what the league is capable of and what it showed here is the part that makes fans furious and players tired. Midway through a season like this, honesty becomes a currency. So here's some more. The silence from the top didn't read as diplomacy. It read as fear. Fear of admitting mistakes and breaking a narrative you've already printed on the posters. Fear of calling out inconsistencies that might require a change tomorrow, not next quarter. Fear of saying openly that you'll take heat for protecting a star because the alternative is losing the one thing you can't buy: momentum. Momentum is fragile. It's a stack of small good choices. It's also a stack of small failures if you let them pile up. A non-call here, a shrug there, a press conference that says nothing, a memo that doesn't go out. None of those looks like a crisis. Together, they are one. Sophie's timing is the dagger. Clark's announcement ricochets, and Sophie steps into the echo with names and verbs. No ducking behind corporate verbs, like disappointment or unfortunate. She uses the kind of words that start hard conversations: targeting, systemic, jealousy, disrespect. They land because they feel accurate. They sting because they hit nerve. They matter because they aren't a content strategy. They're a boundary. If you're wondering why one player speaking cracks through the noise, it's because risk reads. We can all tell when someone is saying the thing that might cost them. We can tell when it's not manufactured outrage, but a line in the sand moment, where the person talking is willing to trade comfort for truth. That's why this can reset the tone, if anyone listens. That's why this can be a beginning, not just a finale with loud music. Let's rewind something else the league won't. The economics. Clark didn't just create a spike, she built a bridge. She took people who didn't watch, made them try one game, and handed them a reason to stay. Bridges don't last by accident. They last because the engineers do maintenance, because the city sets weight limits, because everyone agrees a shared structure is more valuable than any one car crossing it. In the last stretch, the maintenance looked rushed, the limits unclear, and the agreement fragile enough to crack when the loudest drivers hit the gas. When Sophie says, "Protect your stars," she's not asking for magic whistles. She's asking for maintenance, for the league to be the engineer, not the traffic. There's also the human math nobody wants to admit. Being the face of anything is exhausting. Every day is a test you didn't choose. Every slip is a headline. Every bruise is a debate. The price of being first through a door is always higher than advertised. Healthy systems lower the toll. Unhealthy ones pretend the bruises are good for character. That mindset turns a breakout into a burnout. It turns a league's best chance at permanence into a cautionary tale. If you're a fan who's been yelling at your screen for months, this is the part where you take a breath and shift from rage to resolve. Direct the anger at outcomes. Ask for specifics. Demand transparent standards from the league. Ask the broadcast partners what they're doing to reframe play that crosses lines as something other than passion. Stop rewarding cheap shots with virality. Reward the players and teams who model the standard you want to see. Culture is feedback loops. You are one. It's also time to admit a hard thing about envy. It's not just players. Fans feel it. Media feels it. We all want a stake in building something, and when someone gets to the front of the parade faster than we expected, our first impulse is to assume they skipped a step. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. The mature reaction is to check the steps, fix the gaps, and keep the parade moving. The immature one is to trip the leader and call it balance. Balance became the most misused word of the year. If balance means refusing to protect a magnet because you're afraid the compass will favor north, then you don't want balance. You want bland. You want a league where nobody sticks out enough to matter. That version doesn't survive the decade. The version that does is the one where supernovas aren't dimmed. They're surrounded by guardrails, so everyone else can see and not be blinded. The hardest question left is the one that counts. What now? Now is uncomfortable. Now is meetings where people who disagree publicly agree to hammer out something real in private. Now is a memo that doesn't read like a brand deal. Now is training for officials with teeth, not just slides. And a commitment to consistency that can be audited by more than vibes. Now is leadership that uses its chest. Now is players admitting the jealousies they're carrying and letting them go in service of a league that can feed everyone if it stops biting itself. Sophie isn't naive. She knows speaking up means someone will label her dramatic or divisive. She knows the hits that don't come from opponents can come from algorithms and rooms with closed doors. But she also knows the cost of the alternative. A quiet league that slowly loses the oxygen it begged for. A locker room culture that sours into politeness. Masking resentment. A calendar full of games nobody circles anymore. Silence protects nothing. It only postpones the moment you have to tell the truth. Fans, here's your role at halftime. Choose standards over sides. You can love multiple players at once. You can appreciate physical play and still demand a baseline of safety. You can push back on lazy commentary without turning the players into caricatures. You can insist on nuance without losing your fire. The loudest voices aren't always the most useful. The clearest ones are. What does clarity sound like? It sounds like this. We protect stars because they protect the league's future. We enforce rules because the game deserves integrity, not improvisation. We welcome new audiences without punishing the reason they arrived. We let greatness be great, and we ask it to model generosity, not martyrdom. Here's the mid-video trade. If you believe the league can get this right, say so out loud. Drop one concrete fix you want to see next. Officiating standards, suspension guidelines, transparent post-game reports that actually mean something. Tag a friend who swore they'd never watch and tell them why you still do. Then, yes, hit the button that keeps this conversation in your feed, because pressure without persistence is just noise. Back into it. We have to talk about retaliation, because it's real even when it's quiet. Players who speak out don't always get fined. Sometimes they just stop getting calls, or invitations, or camera time. That shadow discipline is poison. It tells everyone else to shut up and survive. The league needs to make it clear that principled criticism is not career suicide. That's grown-up governance. That's what separates a movement from a brand. And since we're telling truths, let's admit that Clark's exit, no matter where the next chapter happens, doesn't erase what she sparked. The cameras learned how to find a story they'd ignored. Families learned how to plan weekends around a schedule they hadn't checked in years. A generation of girls saw a number on a jersey and thought, that could be me, and then didn't immediately add, unless I'm punished for being good at it. You can't unteach that. You can only choose whether to capitalize on it with the next player who catches fire. If the league learns the lessons Sophie just wrote on a billboard, there will be a next. If not, the pipeline will go global, and the domestic product will become a highlight pack for someone else's league nights. There's also a soul-level piece here you can't spreadsheet. Clark's presence forced everyone to imagine a ceiling that was suddenly glass-ish and not concrete. Losing that presence makes everything feel heavier. That's why it feels like grief. The fix isn't pretending you're not sad. It's building the kind of environment where the next light doesn't feel like a threat. That's doable. It's not even that complicated. It just requires choosing courage over comfort in the meetings that matter. Sophie ended up being the messenger nobody asked for. She didn't want to be the headline. She wanted to play ball, get better, make noise when the game demanded it, and go home with her peace intact. But when the league tried to move forward like nothing happened, she refused to help with the charade. The toothpaste is out. It's not going back in the tube. And honestly, it shouldn't. Fresh air beats spin every time. There will be think pieces about tone. There always are. Was she too harsh? Did she undermine unity? Shouldn't this have been handled privately? Those questions are a smokescreen. We tried private. We tried polite. We tried patience. None of that is a substitute for change. Sometimes you need a voice that shakes the room to see which pictures fall off the wall. The ones that crack were never hung right. So here's a blueprint nobody asked for, but everybody needs. Set a standard of contact that treats star targeting as a suspension-level offense, not a teaching moment. Publish post-game officiating audits that list missed high-impact calls and corrective actions. Stop pretending balance means refusing to name names when a pattern is obvious. Add a player-led council with real veto power on safety and scheduling. Train broadcast teams to frame physicality responsibly instead of romanticizing cheap shots as old school. None of that makes the game soft. It makes it honest. And honesty is a better product than chaos. If the league does that, it doesn't just lure Clark back someday. It builds a place where the next phenom doesn't think twice about planting roots. If it doesn't, the sport will still grow. Just not here. Not the way it could. The gap between good and great will be filled by someone else's anthem. There's a smaller, quieter lesson for players in every locker room. don't confuse being hard to beat with being hard to love. The best competitors in history figured out how to channel edge without making empathy a casualty. You can want the smoke on court and still be the person who texts a rookie after a rough night. You can scrap for every inch and still protect the lines that keep the game worth playing. That is strength. That is legacy. We started with a meteor. We end with a mirror. If you love this game, ask what part of the story is yours to fix. If you're a fan, demand standards without turning players into avatars for your arguments. If you're media, tell the truth without feeding the worst parts of the discourse. If you're in leadership, act like it. And if you're a player with a platform, spend it on more than highlights. Spend it on the culture that will outlast your prime. Sophie Cunningham did exactly that. She stood in the crater and said the thing that needed saying. Protect the ones who protect the game. Respect the ones who build the bridge. Challenge the envy that hides in our explanations. Grow up. Do better. Do it now. Maybe this is the moment the league finally does. Maybe this is the line in the sand we stop stepping over. Maybe we learn to keep what we begged for. Or maybe we don't, and the next goodbye comes sooner than anyone wants to admit. Your move, W. And our move, too. If you felt any of this, carry it forward. Drop the one change you'd implement tomorrow. Tell someone why you still believe. Tell someone why you're furious. Then show up. Because the story of what happens next doesn't belong to rumors or press releases. It belongs to everyone who cares enough to keep the pressure on and the love loud. One last thing, simple and sharp. Protect your stars, and they will protect your league. Fail them, and they will find somewhere that won't.